Hi, I'm Robert Joseph, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use your blind hem stitch for knit fabrics, and that is number 14 here on the dial. So there is another blind hem stitch, which is number 12, and you would use that for your woven fabrics. If you haven't watched that video yet, I encourage you to do so. I was going to put both of those stitches into one video, but because the way I chose to do to show you how to use the stitches, I do it in two ways. The videos were just too long and it was over an hour long, so I decided to split these stitches up. So again, this is for the number 14 stitch, the blind hem stitch for knit fabrics. I do it once on a straight piece of fabric and then also on a cylinder fabric that has one seam. So it goes into a circle, and we work with the free arm function on this machine. So that's what you will be seeing in this video, so let's get right to it. Okay, so now we're ready to do the blind hem on a knit fabric, and I apologize for the dark color, but this is the scrap that I had available. So this is a knit, so it stretches, and it has actually a pretty good stretch and recovery. Now I've set this up just like I set up the woven. I've pre-pressed it. I put some interfacing here on the hem allowance only, and then I've overlocked the edge and I've folded it, pressed it over. Now knits sometimes don't really like to stay pressed, so it has a real soft line here. So what I'm going to do is, just like with the woven, I'm going to flip this over so I can see the right side. And of course, if I flip this over, you can see the hem allowance is still up here. But because it may fall out of the hem while I'm getting it ready to blind hem, I'm going to just pin the bottom of this. And that's just to keep the line straight and flat while I'm getting the hem ready, the hem allowance ready for the stitching. And I think I'll put one more pin up here. All right, so then I'm going to take the fabric, if you remember, and fold it back so I see the hem allowance here. And again, I'm going to use that edge of the overlock. Now, if you don't have an overlock stitch on your hem, I did not, then you can just be sure that you're folding back no more than 1/4 inch of that to see no more than 1/4 inch of the hem allowance. Okay, so we're I'm just folding it back to the overlock stitch, and then I'm going to pin it. Just kind of pin it in place, and then we will be removing these pins as we sew. And if you saw it, we're watching the woven blind hem, you would have noticed that. I would have reminded you to pull those out. Okay, and put one more up here. You can't see the top of this fabric, but it goes about the same length as the woven. Okay, so we're ready to blind stitch this now. So it's the same process as the woven, it's just a slightly different stitch. Okay, so we're ready to do the blind stitch, or the blind hemming stitch with the knit, and it's just a little bit different than the woven. It has more zigzags here in the top of the hem here. So again, it's going to stitch here, then it's going to come over and stitch here, and then come back over here. So I just want to show you, let me pull back on the camera, that I have it set up to that stitch. It's number 14, matching up with the notch. So this is the stitch that it's going to make. All right, now let me see if I can get the camera back in place here. Okay, so again, I'm not going to backstitch on this one. I'm going to kind of put this up here a little bit like that to get it started. I got to take this pin out, and again, this folded area that I folded back away from the hem allowance, I'm going to line that up with this crease. And I'm actually, whoops, sorry about that. And I'm gonna drop the foot. I'm gonna start sewing. And I'm going to stop here because I'm going to check to see if my fabric is being caught, and it's not. And I think what's happening is that this is rolling. This is a good spot to have it in, but my knit is rolling away. So I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to show you what's going on here. Okay, so it's catching some of it. So I need to readjust my fold, or where I'm putting this in the machine. So what I'm going to do now, instead of having to repin this, I'm going to put my, what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this roll up, this fold here, with the notch here on the presser foot. And I'm going to see if that makes a difference. So knits have kind of a mind of their own, so you kind of have to kind of adjust some things for knits as you learn to sew. So let's try that. And I feel like this is getting away from me again. So let me just kind of keep pushing this over. I have to keep pushing this over so it goes under the foot. Let me just bring this here so you can see now that I'm actually grabbing it. So this may be kind of inconsistent as far as how much fabric it's going to be grabbing. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So, and see, it keeps wanting to roll back this way, and I'm thinking, let me put the needle down. I don't want to lose my spot. That it keeps wanting to push this roll back. So now if we had the proper foot, I wanted to say that before, but if we had the actual blind hem foot, this may not be as big of an issue. At this point, I'm probably not going to test that out, because these videos are just for the LX3817 and everything that comes with this machine. So you may just need to roll this fabric or try to push it over a little bit more. But what I'm worried about, if we push it more over this way, is you see where this stitch is? It's getting really close to that edge, and I want to make sure that the stitch gets on the hem allowance, but also this stitch can grab the fabric. Okay, so the only thing I can do, I do have some fabric left. I can kind of unpin the rest of this. Let me just keep that in there and see if I can roll this fabric closer like that. But I don't want to get those little stitches caught in this fabric. So it's kind of an inconsistent way to do this. And yeah, see, I'm already going off here. I'm going to take this out. So doing knits with this stitch without the proper foot is obviously challenging. So see what happens. And this is good for you to see, even though I consider myself a professional. I've been sewing for a very long time. That's how I make my living. You know, there are things like this that happen in the real world. And it's good for you to see that even I'm having trouble. But you also have to understand too that, or think about, you know, how much are you going to use this stitch, and are you going to use this stitch for knits? So I'm just going to get this back in here, try to line everything up the way I had it, because I want to finish this. Kind of trying to push this fabric right up into so it gets that other stitch. So that's why I'm doing these videos, so that you can see what's going on with this machine. So even though it messed up a couple of times, or we didn't have things quite done, I mean, it still does not lower the value of this machine. I still think this is a great machine. Okay, so these are our stitches, all right? And this again is on the knit, and the reason that these little stitches are zigzag, that's what makes it the knit hem, is because they need to be able to stretch. Okay, I'm going to push the machine back so we can have a look at what this looks like on the other side. I think I left one of I left all of these Sorry, you can't see what I'm talking about. I left all of these pins in. I totally forgot about pulling these out. So I don't think that was the issue. Okay, so then I'm just gonna kind of pull this up, and now we can kind of see, I'm glad I did red thread, so maybe this fabric color wasn't so bad. You can kind of see the inconsistency. Am I focused here? The inconsistency in sizes when we had to push, and then of course there are some parts here that are totally missed. All right. So this is for using the blind hem on a knit. Now if you had a double knit, you would probably want to use a blind hem to make it look like, you know, there's no stitches there. But, you know, most knits today, especially jersey knits, their hems are done with a cover stitch machine. And if you don't have a cover stitch machine, you can kind of emulate that by a double needle. You just want to make sure that the thread that you're using on the bobbin has kind of a little bit of a stretch to it. So because it still needs to be able to stretch. Okay, so that is the blind hem on knits. And actually, we're going to actually do this on the we're going to do this on an actual round circular one too, so we can test that out on the circular version. Okay. Okay, so we're ready to try out the knit blind hem stitch in a practical sense, and we're going to pretend this is a pant leg or a shirt hem. So on the knits, mostly if it's a pant leg, there's only the one seam on the inseam. There can be seams on both sides, especially if it's a heavier or medium weight double knit. But usually if you're working with a legging, it just has the inseam seam. So that's what we're going to do. So now we have it folded up here. I've got it all prepared, just like I've prepared all of the other pieces for samples, and I'm going to go ahead, and this is the inside, so I'm just going to pin around this edge. Now this one is going to be kind of difficult, and if you have a sleever board, which is basically a long board, skinny board that's kind of got some height to it, you can kind of slip this into the board. I have one of those, but because of where my camera is, it would make it too close to the camera because of the height of the board. Okay, so I've got that edge pinned. So what I'm going to do, let me turn this face side out. Okay, so this is face side out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come under here and grab, let me see, that's not in the, I'm just going to grab where it is at the hem and kind of pull around. Just kind of work it around this way. And it seems like, well, that's silly. You could have just folded it under. But remember, since this is a sample, you would have a whole pant here to deal with. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So now what we can see, and I've got the edge pinned here, so it's not going to roll back, but you can also feel with your fingers if there's any bulkiness where you need to roll back the fabric. So I'm feeling under here, and again, I'm just going to match up to my overlock stitching here. And if you don't have overlock stitching, you can actually just do a small zigzag to kind of give that edge a finish on the knits. That's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this around the edge of the fabric, and we'll be pulling these pins out, and just kind of go around and kind of use your fingers and I guess massage the fabric into place, roll it. See, there's a spot here that's way over, so you just need to pull that down and then just kind of gently kind of roll that fabric and just make sure there's no puckering underneath, because you don't want to get any extra folds up in the fabric in that area where we're going to be stitching. All right, so I'm just pinning this around. think I'm almost back to the start. There we are. Okay, so there's that. It's pinned. All that the hem is pinned now, and because I want to make sure that it goes through the machine without a problem, let's see if I can just fold this out this way. I'm going to take these first pins out. Okay, and then I just kind of have to this sample because it's a small piece. It shouldn't do that if you're working with a pant, a full-on pant. You should just see this edge. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, and we're going to start. I will probably start before the seam because I need to prepare myself for getting to that seam, because I'll talk you through that part. Okay, so we are ready to put this. So let's do it this way. Leave it like that. We're ready to put this in the machine. Okay, so now let me see if I can kind of readjust this camera. I should have done that before I started, but I wanted. Okay, so now we still have the little piece here that I took off for the woven, and so now it's kind of what they call a free arm, where I can literally put the tube here. But the thing is, remember that this is kind of still kind of big, still kind of wide. But I'm gonna put this in here over here, kind of like what we did before. Now I've got this stitch up here. I'm on the focus. I'm on the 14, just like I did for the straight piece, and I just kind of backed up here a little bit. Oh, what happened with the lighting there? That went kind of crazy. We're not focusing. There we go. So again, I'm going to try to line this up right here with this center notch that's on the foot. And I just kind of backed up the camera so you could see it coming around the machine as we sew into the cylinder. Now this part here with the seam might be a little bit difficult. I don't have the seam kind of pressing this way, so I didn't think about that before, but you might want to think about that for yourself. So I'm going to take this pin out, and I'm going to align that up with my center mark. I'm going to put my presser foot down first, and then the needle down. All right, and then I'm just going to have to watch this as I go and kind of help it through. So one of the things that I'm going to have to watch is where this folded part is going in under the foot. So and then the other little zigzags right now. Let me take the camera off the tripod so you can see what's happening. Let's see if I can focus in here for you. Focus. Okay, do you see how much of the fabric it's grabbing there right here? So I feel like that's too much fabric, so I got to figure out how to get this more consistent. So anyway, so that's what's going on right now. Okay, so as we continue on, I'm probably going to have to help this under. And remember, so this is a knit, so if whatever gets stuck here in the foot, it's just going to stretch until, you know, something helps it underneath. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll help it underneath, kind of push it under there, kind of lift up, kind of wiggle that around. And it's still having a little trouble. So regular sewing machines do not like working with thicknesses of knits, just beware. So I'm going to try to just kind of watch now, see if I can get this to the spot that I like. So you will have to watch, and I'm just kind of rolling this over. I definitely need to make sure that it's getting caught here in that stitch. I just feel like this might be a little inconsistent. I think I'm going to do little short bursts. Like that, while I'm kind of managing this fabric. I'm coming up here to the end. We'll have a look at this before I fold it. Okay, and I've gone back over my stitching almost about 3/4 or about 1 inch. Make sure that presser foot, the needle is all the way up into the top position. And then I will pull this out. Okay. So this is what we have. This is what it looks like. Let's see if I can bring this closer to the camera. It's not going to focus for me. There's too much going on in the background. There we go. So as we walk around here, there is some inconsistent. It's hard to be consistent with doing this stitch with the knits. So at a later date, I may find my blind hem foot on my other machines and see if it works on this machine, just to do a comparison and see if that foot actually helps. So I'm going to push the machine back and I will fold out this fabric so we can have a look-see what it looks like on the outside. I'm going to trim up those threads first. Get these all trimmed up first. So this is what it looks like on the hem allowance side. So let's turn this out to the face side. And you see it's kind of like got this little buckle on it. You'll just need to pull that. So then it will lie all flat on the inside. And you can see how much you will see. Of course, if you're using a thread color that matched, it may not be as noticeable. Now this is around where the thickness is. This is where we went back over it. So of course this is the seam. So let's look under there, see what happened there. Did I grab? Barely caught it. That would be nice if we could get it caught like that all the way around, because you can just see little dimples here, and that's kind of would be better. Unless you want to use it for a decorative stitch, then you want to try to be a little bit more consistent than what this is. So now I don't use this stitch all the time, if any time, because I have a professional blind hemmer. So and you can't really see my stitches on that particular machine. But if you're not using this a lot, but it's just something that you come across, or use it once in a while, I would practice this for sure before using it on an actual garment. Of course, doing this by hand, I can certainly do this by hand and not have anything show on the outside. So just an FYI on that. Okay, so that is the blind hem in the round on a knit. Okay, and so that is how you work with the blind hem stitch number 14 for knit fabrics. And as you saw, I had a little difficulty working with it, and that's because knit fabrics stretch and they tend to have a little bit of a mind of their own. So you will just have to practice that and work with the knits a little bit before you actually try it out on a real garment. So just to review, I have my two pieces here. I have my straight long piece for as a sample. My tongue is not working for me today. And then I have the cylinder, which would be more like a pant leg or a sleeve. And again, you will just have to work with attempting the consistency of that stitch for when it goes over to catch the garment fabric. So now as for putting these into a notebook, I'm not actually going to tape them to the cardstock. I'm just going to leave them loose. But I did write on the cardstock down at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that, but I'll read it off of what I've said. I called it the blind hem stitch number 14, and then in parentheses I have said knit fabric. So you want to be clear about that. Now, if you accidentally or you decide to use this one on woven fabrics, it's not really going to make a big difference. Just remember the 2 to 3 stitches in between each of the catch stitches. That for the woven are straight stitches, and then for the knit are tiny zigzag stitches. And that's so that the fabric can stretch if it needs to. And then of course down here I put the model machine number, Brother LX3817, because I have a few different sewing machines here in my studio. All right, so I am just going to put this into my sleeve here. And I make sure that the writing is here on the outside, and then I'm just going to carefully fold and lay them on the inside of the sleeve just like that. Okay, so now if you've stopped in here, you just caught this video by chance and you're not sure what's going on, I have a whole playlist for this Brother Sewing Machine LX3817. So if you want to go back and learn more about what I'm talking about, I do demos on all of the stitches, all 17 stitches that this machine offers, and then also I talk about understanding the different areas on this machine. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so and hit the notification bell. You'll be notified every time I put up a new video, especially if you're interested in learning to sew. So thank you so much for watching this video, and be well.